development charity Oxfam has called for action to tackle the growing gap between the rich and the poor as it launched a new report showing that 42 people hold as much wealth as the 3.7 billion who make up the poorest half of the world's population. In a report published on Monday to coincide with the gathering of some of the world's richest people at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Oxfam said billionaires had been created at a record rate of 1 every 2 days over the past 12 months, at a time when the bottom 50% of the world population had seen no increase in wealth. It's added that 82% of the global wealth generated in 2017 went to the most wealthy 1%. In Ghana as well, the top 10 richest people, according to Goodman AMC's wealth report of 2015, are worth a quarter of the entire country's GDP. Oxfam is drawing the world's attention to these issues as the most powerful political and economic leaders meet to discuss issues of global importance in Davos. Joining us in the studios to discuss this further is Governance and Active Citizenship Program Manager at Oxfam, Abdul Karim Mohammed. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Daniel.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks.
So, first of all, how does this inequality occur, especially at this rate?
Well, we believe that a look at the world economy actually shows that even though the world wealth is increasing at quite astronomical rate, it is at the back of the people who are at the very bottom, the factory floor guys, the laborers out there who are sweating out, I mean the cocoa farmer out there. It is these people who are actually generating the wealth. Yes, investors and innovators are putting in their knowledge and resources and taking the necessary risk to generate some of this wealth. But without the effort of the people who are at the bottom, this wealth cannot be created. And the observation is that even though all these efforts are being made by these, guys at the bottom, they are not being compensated enough for their effort that they are investing in creating this world wealth. And that is how come we are having all these expansion of inequality in the gap between the rich and the poor.
So what, if I can understand what you're saying, what you're saying is that the poorer people in this world are working to make the richer people rich.
Definitely so. That is what is happening. If you take a scan of the minimum wages that are being paid across the globe, and you compare it to what the top executives of most multinationals are taking, even if you bring it down to, state governments, you look at what top chief executives are taking as compared to the little guy down there. There is no room for comparison at all. So this is actually perpetrating this inequality gap that we are talking about.
But it is also true that a number of the world's poorest are unemployed as well, and them getting access to jobs in the first place is a challenge. Yes.
You hit the nail right on the head. Unemployment has become a big challenge, and to an extent is becoming a security threat. In fact, 5 years ago, the World Economic Forum identified this as a threat to global social stability, and as such called for some real concrete action to reverse the increasing trend. Now, if you look at the bandwagon of youth that are trooping across the Sahara, trying to go and make a living out there in Europe, it all stems from these increasing levels of unemployment. And these don't happen in a vacuum. It's simply because our governments have not, over the time, developed the necessary policies that will create the environment to generate employment.
So you believe that the challenge is from the state rather than these private individuals who are profiting?
It's a combination of factors. The state creates the environment within which these companies operate. More often than not, there are a lot of loopholes that exist in the system that these multinationals exploit and sort of get away with paying their fair share of contribution towards development, job creation, and also reducing the inequality gap. Yeah.
You say it's a combination
Yes,
of
yes, yes.
issues raised by the state and by these private individuals. The most powerful people in the world, when it comes to the economic world, the corporate world, and the political world, world leaders, are going to Davos this
in fact,
week.
they're actually there.
Well, they are in Davos, I should say.
Yeah.
For instance, the US President Donald Trump has marshaled one of his largest delegations. For the first time, India, for the first time in some 20 years, India is going with the delegation. President Modi of India has gotten the largest India has ever, as the fastest growing economy in the developed world. How important is it to raise these issues at a time like this, when something like this is going on?
It is very important because, as you stated, when it comes to the movers and shakers of world economy, I mean, these are the people who are assembling in this place. Now, more often than not, the discussion usually centers around how to consolidate whatever wealth that these people, I mean, the top executives of these corporate organizations have amassed, and how do they increase it. Governments also come in with some interest as to how they can attract some of these top investors into their economies and offering them all sorts of incentives. Now, the observation is that usually the terms that are given to some of these big corporates sort of rigs the states from earning its due share of whatever wealth is created. That's why we observe a situation where we have tax incentives, we have tax holidays, and sometimes the loopholes are such that, I mean, they are also able to stash their wealth in secret jurisdictions. I mean, we have price transfer pricing. A lot of illicit financial flows are going on simply because the state, in its bid to attract some of these investments, sometimes go to sleep or losing the environment so much so that it becomes very easy. And you know, these corporate bodies, I mean, they have the resources to employ the best brains when it comes to tax planning, when it comes to legal, I mean, officers and all that. And so the state is virtually left in a state of helplessness. And this has happened in a lot of developing economies like ours, who are resource dependent. And we have seen this trend growing by the year.
I'm glad you brought it home to what is happening here, because we have a president who has declared Ghana is ready for business. You have a government that seems to be pro-business from the time that they were campaigning to come into power till now. In fact, it is on the books of the finance minister abolished about 15 taxes in the 2017 budget. It's on the books of this government to reduce corporate tax from 25% to 20% further. Are we in danger of making things so rosy of these companies falling in this trap you're talking about? Yes,
the risk is there. So I would say it shouldn't be an omnibus sort of policy, such that everyone who comes in gets to enjoy this. Each corporate body must be assessed on its own merit, so that we see where do we stand to benefit most. I don't believe that it is every corporate organization. And we have had the situation where over time, some of these so-called enabling environment has been seriously been abused by a number of corporate bodies that were offered the opportunity. So, in order for them to create the wealth that will further trickle down to the masses. But we have not observed this. Instead, I mean, with time...
Do you know any examples of when these corporate bodies abuse the environment?
Well, I will not, I mean, at the moment be able to tell you, I mean, one specific. But we know that in the mining sector, for instance, I mean, some of the deals that we entered required that we put in stability clauses that virtually prevent the state from making extra gains in terms gold prices appreciate with time. I mean, in such a situation, you have virtually locked yourself in. Even when there are windfall profits, the country is not able to take advantage of such gains. And so these are some of the things that we
must learn lessons from these and not repeat them in the future.
There is a lot from the past that we need to learn from in order to prevent this happening, I mean, going forward.
Right. Thank you so much, Abdul Karim Mohammed.
You're welcome.
For joining us. He works with Oxfam, and this is where we'll have to wrap up this conversation.